Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program. I'm going to get right down to it. Major news is happening as reported by several news agencies and outlets throughout the day and into tonight. I'll be reporting from Axios, USA Today, Bloomberg, Politico, and any other source that I can find as I talk about this story on this evening. According to Axios, this article was written by Barak Ravid, Zachary Basu, and Avery Lotz. The headline reads, Iranian state media confirms Supreme Leader Khamenei is dead. And according to Axios, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in an Israeli strike Saturday as part of a massive joint military operation between the United States and Israel. Iranian state media has confirmed that the Iranian government announced 40 days of public mourning following the martyrdom of the 86-year-old Ayatollah, who had ruled Iran for over 36 years. President Donald Trump celebrated Khamenei's death in a post on Truth Social, calling him, quote, one of the most evil people in history, end quote, and saying his killing was justice for Americans and others killed by Iran over the decades. Trump appeared to confirm that U.S. intelligence played a direct role in tracking and targeting Khamenei, saying the Ayatollah was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. He warned that bombing would continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve what he called the goal of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. Trump claimed Iranian security forces and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps members were already seeking immunity and urged them to peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots. Khamenei was one of the world's longest surviving authoritarian rulers. His death is a massive blow to the regime and could accelerate its collapse, which U.S. and Israeli officials have stated as a goal of their operation. Khamenei's killing sets off an immediate succession crisis with no clear answer. Under Iran's constitution, an interim council assumes power, while the Assembly of Experts, a body of 88 Islamic clerks, select a new supreme leader. But Israel says its opening strikes decimated the chain of command, killing 7 senior defense and intelligence officials and targeting 30 top military and civilian leaders overall. And those confirmed killed include Khamenei's top security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commander, Mohammed Pakpour, Defense Minister Aziz Nasreddin, Khamenei's chief military secretary, Mohammed Shirazi, head of Iranian military intelligence, Salah Asidi, chairman of the SYND, or Iran's nuclear weapons research organization, Hossein Jabal Amilian. Former SPND chairman, Reza Mossa Arfania, one senior official who served is Ali Larjani, secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, former parliament speaker and one of Khamenei's closest confidants. With much of the leadership killed, Larjani has emerged as the most senior civilian official still standing. In a post on X Saturday, he vowed Iran would deliver Israel and the U.S. an unforgettable lesson. Whether the IRCG moves to seize control or whether the strikes create the popular opening Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump have both called for remains unclear. Iranian officials and Israeli targeted Khamenei's sons, but intelligence assessments suggest they survived the strikes. Khamenei, one of the Supreme Leader's sons, Mojtaba, had already been widely discussed as a possible successor to his father. Khamenei took power in 1989, following the death of revolutionary founder Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, and spent 35 years consolidating near total control over the Iranian state. As supreme leader, he held authority over the judiciary, state media, and all security forces, including the IRGC. He wielded that power ruthlessly against dissent. Thousands of protesters were killed under his watch during the most recent nationwide uprising, and his forces have repeatedly crushed reform movements over the decades. In an overnight video address, Trump called for the Iranian people to remain in their homes during the bombing campaign, but rise up and take over your government when it concludes. Iran's exiled former Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, a leading opposition leader who has organized mass protests against the regime, also called for the Iranian people to take to the streets. Pahlavi urged Iranian military secret sources or security sources join the nation and help ensure a stable and secure transition. Otherwise, you will sink with Khamenei's ship and his crumbling regime. So this is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, and I will keep you updated as it is available. And here's a report from USA Today by Jonathan Lamhouse. Iranian media and officials are reporting that a joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran struck a girls' primary school in the southern part of the country, killing 85 people. The IRN news agency said the majority of the casualties were children at the Shajari Tayyibeth all-girls school in Naab. Dozens more are unaccompanied for, the state-run news agency said. A local Iranian prosecutor was quoted in the IRNA report. Reuters could not independently confirm the reports. U.S. and Israeli military forces did not immediately respond to a request for comment. According to President Donald Trump, the United States joined Israel in launching military strikes as well as major combat operations to target Iran's missile capabilities. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people, Trump said, calling the strikes a massive and ongoing operation. While much remains unclear regarding the overall impact of the strikes, Reuters reported, citing state media, at least 40 people died due to the strike on the girls' school in Minab in southern Iran. Separately, state news agency IRNA reported one student was killed and two others injured in a strike on a school in Abyak, located in northeast of Iran. I think these are some photos. If I can get them up there, I can show you. They're still photos, but nevertheless, they are some photos of the massive damage that has been done. Go to the next one. As you can see, people are taken to the streets. I don't know if any of their sacred houses, their sacred mosques of worship were damaged, but I'll find out as I continue to read from various sources here tonight. You can see two men, they're pointing at what appears to be a mosque that was injured. That was destroyed. I'm not too sure. Could be. All right, let me continue on with this story. The article goes on to say, God knows how many more children will be pulled out of the rubble. He wrote in the social post, Kurmanpour wrote in their social media posts, may God give their families strength and patience. Following the strikes on Saturday morning, Israel announced that it had shut down schools and workplaces, moved hospital patients to underground facilities, and banned public gatherings, Reuters reported. The move comes as Iran began launching retaliatory missiles at Israel, prompting Defense Minister Israel Katz to declare a state of emergency across the country, warning the public of Iranian missile and drone attacks, per Reuters. So far, there have been few reports of damage or injuries from Iran's initial missile attacks. Israel's typically have access to bomb shelters and are warned to hurry to them by a nationwide alert system. I don't know if America does have bomb shelters intact in every city in case of such a thing could happen to America. I'm not aware of any, and if there are any bomb shelters, they're never discussed, they're never talked about, and people never prepared, even in simulated scenarios, to go to bomb shelters. There should be bomb shelters throughout the United States of America in case such an event, an unfortunate event, would happen. It would only make sense that people have an opportunity to go to safety the same way that the rich and the powerful will have an opportunity to go to safety. In response to reported deaths and decimation of Shajared Tayyabeh, former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who removed herself from Trump's Make America Great Again movement last year, shared an X post voicing her condemnation of what transpired at the girls' school. Quote, "I did not campaign for this. I did not donate money for this. I did not vote for this in the elections or Congress. This is heartbreaking and tragic. And how many more innocent will die? What about our own military?" End quote. Okay. Down in Dubai, according to Bloomberg, the Dubai airport has been damaged in strikes after Iran retaliates for what has happened. This article was written by Lean Al-Rastan. Dubai's main airport, the world's busiest, I didn't mean to slip up there, Dubai's main airport, the world's busiest aviation hub, was partially damaged by a suspected aerial strike on one of its main remedial buildings, marking another escalation after air traffic in the Persian Gulf closed down hours after Iran's retaliatory attacks. The airport operator confirmed that one concourse at Dubai International sustained minor damage in an incident, which was quickly contained, and that 4 employees sustained injuries, according to a statement. Footage shared on social media showed a thin plume of smoke rising from one of the main departure buildings, with emergency and fire services on the tarmac. Another video from inside the building appeared to show some damage, though the overall structure was broadly intact. The strike highlights just how deep Iran's retaliatory campaign against the initial attack by U.S. and Israeli forces has advanced into the Persian Gulf, where authorities were forced to respond to a barrage of missile and drone attacks by closing the airspace. The fallout was more imminent at the main airports in the region, where tens of thousands of travelers were left stranded. As airspaces closed down, forcing Emirates, Qatar Airways, Etihad Airways, and other carriers to halt all operations. It goes back to my question about shelters. You mean to tell me that in America, there are no shelters in every city? And what about in places where Americans are traveling? Do they have shelters intact? Many times when people are traveling, they only think about the good times that they're going to have. They never think that something could possibly go wrong at any moment or any second. These are precautionary methods that people have to think about, because the reality of the unforeseen happening, it does occur. The fallout was most at Dubai International Airport. Arrivals and departure boards in the terminals initially showed major delays that quickly cascaded into a full suspension. A disruption on a scale not seen in decades. Emirates has had long prided itself in its clockwork operations, even in times of crisis, be it the pandemic or regional strife, but this time interrupting all services was the only possible response. Emirates extended flight cancellations into Sunday morning, while Qatar Airways said operations are suspended until further notice. With an update planned for Sunday morning, Etihad Airways has said earlier on Saturday that it will maintain the suspension at least until Sunday afternoon. Disruptions at airports in the region weren't limited to cancellations. Kuwait's Civil Aviation Authority said a drone hit the country's airport, causing severe light injuries and limited damages to the passenger building. The region functions as a global super connector, linking any 2 points on the planet with one single stop in airports like Dubai, Doha, or Abu Dhabi. As a result, carriers including Emirates, Qatar Airways, and Etihad have created massive fleets that funnel passengers through their hubs, turning the Middle East into a vital artery for global air traffic ways. And it just goes on and on. Now, Congress rushes to get in the loop as critics denounce Iran strikes. Well, this article, pardon me for a moment. Yeah, my glasses are fogged up. I gotta straighten this out. Gotta be able to see how to read here. I knew something was going on. I just didn't know what, but I found the problem. So I gotta fix this real quick. Yes, I wear reading glasses. There's no pretending. I read a lot. As a law student, all I do is read night and day. That's it. Take tests. Okay. According to Jordan Carney, Geslell, I'll just say Ewing, and Meredith Lee Hill. And this is according to Politico Foreign Affairs. Congress is scrambling to learn more about President Donald Trump's overnight strikes on Iran and his long-term strategy for the Middle East as votes to restrain further military action loom next week. Good luck with that. It's not going to happen. You can try, but there will be no success. Trump's administration officials will brief staff on key congressional committees Sunday, according to two people granted immunity to disclose the plans, with the House Intelligence, Armed Services, and Foreign Affairs panels expected to take part. Staff on the Senate Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committees will also be briefed this weekend, according to congressional aides. Efforts are underway to set up lawmaker briefings next week, with key congressional leaders set to hear from administration officials as soon as Monday. Representative Gregory Meeks of New York, the top foreign affairs Democrat, told fellow panel members on a private call that administration officials will brief all House lawmakers Wednesday, according to two people on the call granted immunity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Other House aides said the all-members briefing could happen as soon as Tuesday. Senate Majority Leader John Thune signaled in a statement Saturday he too expected the administration to come to the Hill to discuss Trump's actions. I look forward to administration officials briefing all senators about these military actions, Thune said. Democrats want the administration to go further. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that in addition to a classified briefing for all senators, members of the administration need to testify publicly before congressional committees. The administration has not provided Congress and the American people with critical details about the scope and immediacy of the threat, Schumer said. In advance of the attack, Secretary of State Arubo briefed most members of the Gang of Eight, which includes the top leaders of each chamber and the heads of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Of course, the White House press secretary, she was informed as well. Rubio wasn't initially able to connect with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, according to two people, blah, blah, blah. They can't talk about the sensitive matter. Well, if you could get in touch with everybody else, how come you couldn't get in touch with Hakeem Jeffries? You know, some of this stuff don't make sense when I read it. You could get in touch with the Gang of Eight, the leaders of each chamber, the heads of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, and you can get in touch with the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. But you couldn't get in touch with the minority black leader in the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries. According Now, that makes no sense to me. Just think about it logically. You can get in touch with everybody else, but you couldn't contact the brother and let him know what's going on. It doesn't pass the smell test, ladies and gentlemen. Seriously, it does not pass the smell test. I don't like being up under these hot lights at 10:30 at night, but this is important information and I have to talk about it. You know, if you're going to call an emergency session, then call an emergency session. Everybody doesn't need to be involved. Call all the important people and let them know what's happened. So the scramble to brief a broader swath of lawmakers comes as bipartisan coalitions in the House and Senate move to force votes next week on measures that will limit Trump's ability to take additional military action against Iran without Congress's sign-off. Well, y'all wasting y'all time. You know the Republicans are not going to vote with the Democrats to limit the president's powers. It's not going to happen. Despite calls from Democrats to quickly reconvene both chambers and debate the war powers measures, Speaker Johnson and Thune, of course they're not going to convene. Why would they? Why would they listen to anything that the Democrats have to say? It makes no sense. They're not going to listen to them. They pay the Democrats no mind. As far as they're concerned, the Democrats are not even an equal part of Congress or the Senate. They have no voice. What they think doesn't matter. Their votes doesn't matter. Well, what the American people will think about in November, heading up toward the midterm elections, is not going to be about the Iranian war. You can believe that. In the midterm elections, it's going to be about the economy, jobs, healthcare, Medicaid, Medicare. It's going to be about mortgage prices. Are they going to stay low or are they going to go high? It's going to be about people being homeless on the streets, not being able to find shelter and food. It's going to be about the possibility that millions and millions more Americans will probably lose their jobs and so-called corporate downsizing, restructuring, reorganization, while the corporate heads will get significant pay raises and increase. There's a lot going on here in America. And just as other countries are concerned about their survival, we have to be concerned about what goes on here in the nation. The people's business is not being handled the way the people would want it to be handled. Now, some of you can delude yourself and tell yourself, oh, this is what we voted for, and you're a liar. It is not what you voted for. You did not vote for the agricultural farming industry to suffer. No, you did not, because you didn't plan on it. You didn't see it coming. People did not vote for the escalation of all the violence and protests that's happening in the streets in this country. That's not what people voted for. So that meeting is not going to take place. Johnson and Thune said they're not going to do it, and they're not going to do it. Frequent Trump basher Representative Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, who is co-leading the effort in the House to force a war powers vote, characterized the strikes on social media as, quote, acts of war unauthorized by Congress, end quote. Well, they're going to have a talk with Representative Massie, and he'll change his tone after a while. Otherwise, reaction to the strikes mostly broke down on party lines. One of the first Democrats to respond to the strikes, Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona, condemned the attack on social media, writing that we can support the democracy movement and the Iranian people without sending our troops to die. Well, that's going to happen. Of course, it's going to get ugly. And it's going to get nasty. And my question right now is this. For all the warmongers out there, when your sons and your daughters are put on the front lines and you get that call or someone visits your house How are you going to respond? Don't forget about the Vietnam War. Don't forget about World War I and World War II. I know a lot of the survivors from those wars, and I've spoken with them. Don't forget about Iraq. Remember? Kuwait. Don't forget about Agent Orange. Do you know how many Vietnam veterans right now are still fighting to get full benefits from that era? Many of them are almost 80 years old, and still the Veteran Affairs Department will not give them what they need. Let me tell you something about war before I end this video. War is ugly. War is not a pretty thing. There are major, major casualties of war. Freedom is not cheap. And I have total 100 million% respect for every man and woman who are serving and have served in the armed forces of the United States of America. God knows how many of the brave men and women whose lives became unofficial martyrs for the cause of freedom, justice, and equality. And that's on all sides, whether they were Democrat or Republican, libertarian or independent, whether they were black or white or in between. Our men and women who serve in the armed forces of the United States of America, they deserve the utmost respect and admiration from all of us. And that is a fact. They serve with honor. They serve with integrity. They serve knowing that at any given point in time, they will be called to defend the interests of the nation by the commander-in-chief. This is real. It just got real. This is not a game. This is not a test. This is not a joke. And it's going to continue for a while. So they should get together behind closed doors, away from the public, and sit down and talk. Representative Jim Hines, Democrat from Connecticut, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, called Trump's military action a war of choice with no strategic end game, quote, close quote, and said that he will vote for the War Powers Resolution when it gets a vote next week. In a Saturday morning video announcing the strike, Trump warned, quote, the lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war, but we're doing this for the future, end quote. As I just said a few moments ago, even before I read this, there are going to be major casualties, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to read about it. We're going to see it on social media. It's going to be plastered on all the major networks. Whether individuals want casualties of war to happen or not, it's going to happen. As of right now, no U.S. casualties were reported in the immediate aftermath of the strikes. Congressional Republicans, including members of leadership and top committee chairs, quickly backed the joint U.S.-Israel operation. House Intelligence Committee Chair Rick Crawford said Trump had given Iran plenty of opportunities to take the diplomatic route. Well, last week, or a few days ago, when they ended the talks in Geneva with no agreement in sight, I think Iran's faith was set then. That's why they did not reconvene. Senator John Barrasso, the number 2 Republican, called the action peace through strength. Okay. Well, let me ask this question. How many of the rank and file will allow their sons and daughters to serve in the military? The strikes are now figuring into an unrelated partisan standoff over funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which has been in a partial shutdown since February 14. That has nothing to do with what's going on. The partial government shutdown is because the Democrats do not want to fund ICE billions of dollars anymore. That's why they have it. Some Republicans quickly seized on the military action to pressure Democrats to reopen the department. The Democrats are not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They'll try to take advantage of the situation and then say that the money is going to be for this, and then they're going to take the money and use it for what they want to use it for. So they can try to pressure the Democrats all they want, and the Democrats, they're going to have to learn how to stand their ground when it comes to some things, you know? All right. Longtime Iran hawk Lindsey Graham reported at the joint U.S.-Israeli operations, he rejoiced. He's very happy. He's celebrating, calling it necessary and long justified. The end of the largest state sponsor of terrorism is upon us. Graham wrote on social media, freedom for the long-suffering Iranian people. The South Carolina senator has repeatedly encouraged military action against Iran, urging Trump to follow through on his January promise to respond with force after the Iranian regime killed thousands of its own citizens during a massive wave of protests. All right, listen to John Fetterman. Y'all need to vote this dude out of office, straight up. Pennsylvania, we made a mistake voting for this man. We did. We should have never voted for him. We won't make that mistake again. I said, we won't make that mistake again. Fetterman, we're going to vote you out of office. We will not vote you back. Crossing the aisle, Senator John Fetterman joined Graham in cheering on the operation. President Trump has been willing to do what's right and necessary to produce real peace in the region. Well, what about peace here in America? Can we get peace here on the homeland? Can we get peace here in America? All right, do I have any more information about this topic before I conclude this video? Yes, I do. Pennsylvania and New Jersey lawmakers react to the U.S.-Israeli joint strike on Iran, according to something politics, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer in the politics section. This is written by Brett Soltis and Amy Rosenberg. By Saturday morning, when many Americans were waking to the news that the U.S. and Iran had launched a missile attack on Iran, U.S. Senator John Fetterman had already spoken in support of the bombings. Operation Epic Fury, Fetterman said on X at 4:18 a.m., using the name given to the campaign by the Trump administration, President Donald Trump, blah, 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 to bring peace to the region. He said, God bless the United States, our great military, and Israel. Well, Fetterman, you have a right to say what's in your heart, and you have a right to cross party lines. But Pennsylvanians have the right to vote you out of office. Because you definitely are not, you have not been serving the interests of the constituents in Pennsylvania since you've been elected. Half of the time he's been sick. And now that he appears to be better, he doesn't do anything for Pennsylvania. And he doesn't care. Because in his mind, he thinks the Republicans sent him there. In his mind, he thinks he's a Republican. And in his mind, he doesn't, quote unquote, give two flips in a wind, end quote, about what the people of Pennsylvania have to say. When Pennsylvania sent people to Congress, to the Senate. When they elect people to statewide elections for the mayoral, during the mayoral campaigns, when they elect the mayor, when they elect council people, they are supposed to serve the constituents that put them in places of responsibility. And that is the bottom line. If politicians around the country, I don't begrudge Republican politicians for serving their constituents because they're the ones who sent them there. But the Democrats have got to learn to serve the Democratic constituency. Stop being so passive and wimpish with all this, this mushy crap coming from the Democratic Party. All the whining and the crying and making the Instagram posts. Listen, I told you in the previous video, connect with the people who put you in power. Go on a freaking tour. Come back to your home states, the same way you did when you were campaigning. Hold town hall meetings. And get into these rooms and these places and listen to what people have to say. They want a Democratic Party that is strong. They want a Democratic Party that is fierce. They want a Democratic Party that will not back down. That's the kind of Democratic Party they want. We don't want weak leaders in power because weak leaders get nothing done. They're too conciliatory. They go along with any and everything. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, the missile strikes were focused on the home of Iran's leader and a number of targets in Tehran and other cities. Trump called on the Iranian people to take over the government and put an end to the country's decades of theocratic rule. Well, they are an Islamic nation. And theocracy rules in an Islamic nation. It is not a democratic society. It's more theocratic than anything else. The possibility of such an attack was anticipated for weeks as tensions rose between Iran and Israel and the U.S. positioned warships in the region. They weren't positioned there just to take up space, ladies and gentlemen. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro criticized Trump in a statement Saturday for acting without congressional approval, while adding that the Iranian regime must never be allowed to possess nuclear weapons. Trump and his administration have not demonstrated to the American people that we have a clear path with this mission, and by taking unilateral action without a broad coalition of international partners, he is putting our brave service members at greater risk and undermining our national security interests, Shapiro, or a Democrat, said. You know what the problem with Vietnam was? They had no exit strategy. They had no plan over there. None. That's why a lot of people don't like to look at the raw footage of Vietnam in the documentaries. You know, former CBS News Dan Rather, when he was a correspondent, he went to the heart of the Vietnam battle. And they did not have an exit strategy, and it cost Lyndon Baines Johnson not to accept his party's nomination because he knew he would not win. He knew it. And that's how Nixon came into power. When the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, and when he gave his famous speech against the Vietnam War at the Riverside Church in New York City, they said it was wrong. They said it was the wrong thing for him to do. But history has proven that he was on the right side of history. We all have a conscience, ladies and gentlemen. Whether people listen to their conscience or not, but we do have one. So U.S. Senator Dave McCormick, Republican from PA, said he is praying for U.S. troops and allies during this challenging and noble mission. If there are going to be casualties of wars, let me tell you something, Senator. The family members are going to tell you to save your prayers. Nobody wants their sons or their daughters coming back in body bags. Here's a picture of, now listen, now check this. I got to show you all this. Pennsylvania U.S. Senator Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dave McCormack in Braddock, Pennsylvania on February 2nd. I want you to look at this picture. Picture is worth a million words. See the photo? Since he has been in office, Senator John Fetterman has not taken up a photo with not one Democratic lawmaker. Not one. I'll say it again. He has not taken one photo with one Democratic lawmaker since he's been a Democratic senator. He is no true Democrat. I would respect him better if he said, you know what, I'm not a true Democrat. I'm tired of the Democratic Party. I'm just going to switch over and become a Republican. But he won't do that because he knows the Republicans are not going to elect him. He would rather stay Democrat to try to coerce the Democrats to vote him back in office. Well, we're not going to do it. I can't wait until his term is up. Boy, am I going to vote against him. Yes, I am. I wouldn't care if they had a novice to replace him. I would not vote for Fetterman ever again. So on Saturday afternoon, several dozen protesters gathered outside Philadelphia City Hall chanting "Death to America" and "Free Palestine" and speaking about the U.S. Incursion. That is dumb. You mean death to America? That is stupid. Seriously. Some people don't know what to protest about. And that's one of the dumbest things right there. American troops deserve the support of every American, point blank. You don't see the Israeli citizens going against their government, do you? Because they know what will happen to them. Oh, they got a tight rein over there in Israel. You don't see the Israelis in the streets protesting against their own people. You don't see it. McCormack noted earlier this week that Iranian citizens have been embroiled in protests against this government in recent weeks, which is true. The government responded with an internet blackout and a violent crackdown. More than 7,000 citizens have died as a result of the crackdown, according to a U.S.-based human rights agency. All right, McCormack, how about this? Where was your sympathy for the people who were killed in Minnesota? In Minneapolis, rather. Where was the sympathy for them? Where was the heartfelt sympathy for the families of Alex Preddy and Nicole Good? A life is a life. McCormack, an Army veteran of the First Persian Gulf War, added that people in the U.S. are distrustful of prolonged military operations overseas. Both McCormack and Fetterman have spoken in support of a strong U.S. backing of Israel, and like many lawmakers have received campaign donations from pro-Israel lobbying groups such as the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. According to a political group critical of U.S. support for Israel that tracks such public spending. I'm going to leave that right there because this article goes on and on and on and on and on, and I'm not going to read any more of it. The bottom line is the military U.S.-Israeli airstrikes has killed Ayatollah Khamenei, who was the supreme leader of Israel. Even the Washington Post now, they decided to comment on it as well. So I might as well go ahead and read what the Post said real quick. According to the Washington Post, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, is dead at 86. He played a behind-the-scenes role in Iran's Islamic Revolution, served as president in the 1980s, and dominated the country for more than 3 decades. This article for the Washington Post was written by William Brannigan. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Shiite Muslim cleric, who played a behind-the-scenes role in Iran's Islamic Revolution, served 2 terms as president in the 1980s and dominated the country for more than 3 decades as supreme leader. Was killed Saturday as Israel and the United States launched a joint attack on Iran. He was 86. President Donald Trump announced the death in a Truth Social post, calling the Ayatollah one of the most evil people in history. Hours later, his death was confirmed by announcers on Iranian state television who said Ayatollah Khamenei was killed at his office. Black smoke billowed over the Ayatollah's compound in Tehran on Saturday near the outset of a joint military operation at decimating Iran's nuclear program and military and fueling a change in government. In announcing the attack, the second by Israeli and U.S. forces since June 2025, Trump publicly urged Iranians to take over your government. Once the operation ended, he had previously called on Iranians to rise up and pledge U.S. backing after widespread anti-government demonstrations broke out in December, sparked by a severe economic crisis. The protests burgeoned into mass demonstrations against Iran's entrenched theocratic system. Previously, taboo chants of death to Khamenei were heard in streets marches around the country. How many of you remember the uprising in China, Tiananmen Square? Remember Tiananmen Square? The protests that occurred there? Those protesters, every one of them was severely punished, and they're still in prison to this day. And they're not coming out. Because in the communistic nation of China, and nations like that, you do what the state says. Communism rules. China will engage in economic empowerment with any nation. But when it comes to their politics and policies, they don't want to hear it. It's about making the money. Security forces responded by launching a bloody crackdown, killing more than 6,800 protesters and detaining tens of thousands. Ayatollah Khamenei blamed the carnage on Trump, denouncing him as a criminal who openly encouraged the protesters by promising U.S. military support. An early follower of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei, the austere cleric who inspired the revolution against Iran's U.S.-backed monarchy, Ayatollah Khamenei staunchly opposed the United States and Israel, rejected Western liberalism, and adhered strictly to fundamentalist social policies. As supreme leader of Iran since 1989, when he succeeded Khomeini, Ayatollah Khamenei wielded ultimate political and religious authority in the Islamic Republic, outranking the elected president and overseeing the country's armed forces, internal security apparatus, judiciary, state media, and foreign policy. He had the final say on a landmark July 2015 nuclear accord with 6 world powers, including the United States, that restricted Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the easing of crippling economic sanctions. Although deeply distrusted of U.S. motives, and despite the misgivings of fellow hardliners, he ultimately endorsed the deal, and it was formally implemented in January 2016. but he appeared to regret it after Trump pulled the United States out of the agreement in 2018 during his first term and reimposed harsh sanctions. In retaliation, Iran began disregarding some provisions of the nuclear deal, notably limits on quantity and quality of its production of enriched uranium, but did not renounce its pledge never to acquire nuclear weapons. Ayatollah Khamenei was especially incensed by the Trump-ordered killing of a top Iranian commander, Qasem Soleimani, in a U.S. drone strike in Iraq in January 2020. He called the killing a cowardly act, denounced Trump as a clown, and rejected the U.S. president's calls for new talks, which he said were intended only to boost Trump's re-election bid. After Trump lost the 2020 election, Ayatollah Khamenei said its chaotic aftermath, marked by Trump's baseless fraud claims, illustrated the ugly face of liberal democracy in the United States and made clear the country's definite political, civil, and moral decline. When Iran was convulsed by widespread protest after the September 2022 death in custody of a young woman who was arrested by Islamic morality police for a dress code violation, the supreme leader publicly blamed the United States and Israel and backed a deadly crackdown. How he wondered, could some people not see the foreign hand behind the rioting? This is going to be a war. It's going to be a serious one. With his bushy white beard and easy smile, Ayatollah Khamenei cut a more avuncular figure in public than his perpetually scrawling but much more revered mentor, and he was known to be fond of Persian poetry and classic Western novels, especially Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. But like the uncompromising Khamenei, he opposed moderates' efforts to promote political and social reforms domestically and to secure rapprochement with the United States. I will continue this on tomorrow. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to go. So thank you for the likes on the video. Thank you for your comments in the comments section. And until next time, never surrender, never quit.